So this is them heading back to the city.
From the city. They've just left after the massacre, and they're driving out in the wilderness now. Tim and Hank are talking about some tunnel. Hank is asking, you know where the tunnel is? Tim's like, I know, we're supposed to meet this guy, Perry. If he's going to be there, I don't know. But we don't really get very clear about what that means. Tim tells Hank, I thought it was good of you to spare that slummer. Sid, the member of the Hangman's Horde who caught Ricky, isn't happy about this, asking Hank, why did you spare that kid's life anyway? Hank says he's a herald of the ones inside the walls. He's been waiting for something. He's like, we've got a few of the pieces in place and there's only one thing left. And so on they ride. They arrive at this gathering. A bunch of outsiders, all in different manner of dress, are gathered here, partying, dancing, singing, playing music. We've got one guy drinking something out of a horn and peeing at the same time. It's just, when they arrive at the gates, he runs into this guy, Abarth. We've heard his name in issue 1. He is who Ricky mistook Hank for. He assumed it was Abarth and his crew showing up to rough them all up. But now we see Abarth and we meet him. Hank and he interact. We can see that they're enemies.
I would say so.
They don't like each other. That's fair to say. Hank is able to drop the information that Ricky gave him in the slums. He's able to tell him, I know that you are doing stuff for this guy in the city and he's paying you off. And that's sort of a point. I guess he's trying to shame him for that. A true outsider wouldn't stoop to working for these towners. Ugh. Hank is pulled away by a couple of ladies, and Sid stays behind and complains to Tim that Hank is changing. Man, Hank's changing tack. He points out that Hank has always been about join us or die, like Subject and the Gruff Man talked about. It's always been about the Horde. Join the Horde must grow, the Horde will grow and conquer all. And now Hank has said, we oppose the Black Pyramid. That thing is our enemy, and everyone should hate that thing. And it's kind of a subtle distinction, but Sid is feeling a change in the air with that. Yeah, Sid is blaming Tim for this change in Hank. He's telling him, ever since you've come around, he's been interested in the city more. You keep telling him all this stuff about city things, and now he's wanting to go that way. Tim's like, look, man, I'm just doing what he tells me to do. Sid lays it out and says, we shouldn't be worrying about the city until we conquer all these people. Tim answers that Joan says it wouldn't be worth the losses. Who's Joan? Well, she rides up on a motorcycle because she's cool as hell. She also runs into Abarth, and they kind of seem somewhat friendly with each other. It's not nearly as combative a conversation as it was between Hank and Abarth. We learned from this conversation that usually at these gatherings, Hank challenges Abarth to a fight to the death so that he can be, Abarth says, king of the Outlands. And we didn't see that this time, so lends some credence to what Sid is saying. Joan admits, he didn't do any of that stuff. Well, we are taking a new direction. We're doing something different. And then we learned that Joan used to be Abarth's general. So that's the history here. That's why the familiarity. Joan was once Abarth's general, and she left to become Hank's. Because, as she says, I'm his general and not yours because he's right. And soon you too will know our truth. So, this Joan character, general of the Hangman's Horde. She's all in on the message of the vision that Hank was talking about. She disagrees with Sid and agrees with this newer direction that maybe we shouldn't be throwing everything we've got against everything the wilderness has. So once again, as we talked about with the last creator chat, even within the Horde, there are these different viewpoints and these different tensions and desires. So Joan gets there, she goes and she finds Hank, where he's sleeping with these two ladies, and she says, wake up, we found your brother. So they gather up a crew. Hank asks her where he is. She says he's with a distant tribe far to the south, very far out there. And we see a shot of this brother, who we've only heard him referred to as the demon. He's zonked out.
I love that panel.
On some drugs. His eyes are rolled back in his head. There's a pitcher of liquid and a spilled cup beside him. He's just laid out in the wilderness with a bunch of hippies. So that's what his brother's up to. And so on they ride far to the south to this distant tribe. They meet with the leader, who's kind of a bit woo, this guy. He wants to talk about mysteries, and he's bringing up ghost stories and supernatural beliefs that are in the world, while Hank is just trying to find his brother. He's not interested in these shenanigans. He's just looking for his brother. The mystic tells him that you can't find your brother if you don't understand where he is in here, man. And that's when Hank realizes he's been drugged. Or rather, the drink he's drinking is a hallucinogen, and he starts seeing trippy colors and starts to hallucinate, fall under the effects of this drug as the mystic begins this ritual where they venerate this entity named Ataatsu, beseech him for gifts of wisdom and strength and power. And he's going through this, this rite of sorts. He's going through this ritual, sort of telling this story and telling about the greatness and the power of this Ataatsu character. And as he's doing this, Hank is hallucinating that he is slitting his own throat, dying, crawling back out of a grave, I suppose. And then from the wound in his throat, Six Gun crawls out. Six Gun, who right now we've only seen as a statue in Ricky's imagination. So when it comes to an artist drawing this thing, he's gonna have to design him well enough that he's recognizable, I guess, or not. But this is what we're seeing here. This is what's going on in Hank's head. He's just read Ricky's pamphlet where it talks about heroes of days past, people who fought for the people, and he's got some scheme in mind, partially inspired by Ricky's pamphlet and having to do with this tunnel, and now he's taking these drugs, and this is what, all this stuff going through his head is he's seeing himself die and come back to life. If what he's saying is going with the words of the mystic's ritual, then this is Hank's idea of him realizing his dying and realizing his full potential, I suppose. After the trip, we come to kind of from the brother's perspective now, the demon. He's waking up as Hank is admonishing the mystic for drugging him and passing all of this psychoactive stuff as enlightenment. And he's kind of miffed. He doesn't like that his brother has gone missing for so long and that he's found him here just taking these drugs. And he's telling the mystic, this is all lies. Actually, to his credit, he says, I don't know if you're lying or if you've just drunk so much of this stuff that you actually believe what you're preaching, but you have no power. None of this is true, and you should join us. So they burn their homes. He leaves them there and goes off to finally talk with his brother. I really like this conversation between Hank and Donnie. We learned that the demon's name is Donnie. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but some of the information we get from it is that Donnie used to speak this message, and he wasn't happy with the results. But Hank is adamant that this belief that they had back then, that this vision was special and that Donnie needed to give the message to people, is still important. He admits that he's been distracted for a while building his army, and now he wants to go back to their original purpose. He has a way to get into the city through this tunnel. He wants them to follow the tunnel into Boomtown for Donnie to speak the message of the vision and it's not exactly laid out, but he says they'll be with us. So he wants people to hear the message, and I guess he believes that they will convert people to their cause inside the city if they can just get in there and give them the message of the vision. So we see what Sid was feeling is right. What he perceived to be Hank's purpose, Hank is now saying was just a distraction. Hungering after this power and stuff, but now he wants to go back. He has this dream where people from the city are calling out and he doesn't know what they're saying, but now he feels like he understands it, and he shows Donnie Ricky's pamphlet in consideration of the annexes and all living people, which we know talks about wishing that a hero would come along to unite the people and galvanize everyone against their oppressive government. So Hank is taking this as a sign, the same way he feels Donnie takes these hallucinations and mystic teachings as signs and wonders, and he's trying to get back with his brother to do things like they were before, or way before the story ever started. And I think that's it. So that's issue 2. We learn a lot about the outsiders. I really like that after they slaughter all of Ricky's friends and neighbors and leave him there. Usually in the story you follow the hero after that, but I like that we follow these villains instead, and we find out that in their world, from a certain point of view, they're not villains. They're doing what they need to do for the greater good. They have this belief that they're following, and I really like spending a whole issue with them and seeing how the other side lives. The way that this ends, where it sort of ties their fate into the fate of what's going on in the city, it's a strong start, I think. And that's it for now. We'll come back in another video and talk about, get into a little more detail on some of the things that we've seen in issue 2.
You did the thing. Good job.